All right. Good morning and good afternoon. This is our weekly hypnosis talks with me, Jasiah, and of course, the great Pete. And today we've decided to talk about some ways to listen inwards. And we're working on a new format where we're just going to sort of present a topic, and then Pete will take us through an experience. And then afterwards, we will discuss it for people who are trying it as clients or, doing a self hypnosis, and also for practitioners. So today, we want to discuss ways to listen inwards. And the reason why I chose this topic is because um, when we go into a practitioner, they often guide us in ways to listen to ourselves internally. And more often than not, we have the answers inside of us. We just need the guidance pathway or permission to listen to them and believe in their validity. And so I thought today it would be nice to go through a experience with Pete, and then we can, of course, talk about it. Anyone who's watching live can, talk about your experience or ask questions, and then, of course, anyone who's watching afterwards could do the same. So we'll go ahead and pass it over to Pete for now. Ways to listen inwards.
Yeah. And I love listening inward just for the fact that we all live in such a fast paced world, right? That it's so easy to overlook the importance of slowing down. You know, if we think of everything going on, like even like my day today, like here it is noon. And since I got up at 6:30 to now, I've just been bombarded with external things, distractions, whether it's the phone or even my daughter in the morning or, work and phone calls. Like so much stuff happens around us. And very rarely do we take the time to pause, to go within, to just listen to our thoughts, our feelings, our desires, right? And that's realistically the importance of going inwards. And so for this moment of whether you want to call it self-reflection, introspection, right? When we do this, and everyone listening, as long as you're in a safe and comfortable spot, kind of important. You don't want to be somewhere where you're just going to feel awkward doing this. But essentially, all we're going to do is just get nice and comfy where we are. We're going to take that deep breath in. Then we're just going to slowly exhale and just closing our eyes. Now, some people wonder why we close our eyes, and essentially it's because it allows us to tune out some of the outside distractions. See, it allows us to focus maybe on the sound of my voice. Maybe it allows you to focus on the thoughts or what you're feeling. But as we go inwards, maybe you get to feel the gentle rise and fall of every breath. See, maybe you feel it moving through your nostrils. Maybe you take those full belly breaths where you feel it just expanding your whole body. And then when you exhale, you're just feeling it let go, feeling it being released from your body. And maybe your mind can begin to wander, to drift on something you've been thinking or feeling or desiring for a while. So maybe when we go inwards, we can be playful about it. We can look at that thought or that feeling or that desire and turn it into an animal. Even if we think of an animal as big as an elephant, we can still shrink it down so it can fit into your palm of your hands. Because just for now, just imagine you get to hold that animal right in the palm of your hands. You get to look at it. Maybe you realize how small it is in this moment, knowing later if we need to, we can make it bigger, or we can continue to make it smaller. But just listen to this animal. Listen to why it's here, what it wants, what it needs to feel. See, as you just allow yourself the space now to listen, this is your mind's time to process the emotions. Maybe it uncovers that passion. Maybe it's here just to identify how to fulfill this animal. And you get to realize that as you look at this animal in your hand, for now you get to decide what to do with it. See, if it's a thought you want to keep exploring later on, maybe you put it somewhere safe so it knows when to come back out. Maybe you get a little timer so it knows come, let's say 6 o'clock tonight when things are quieting down, it gets to come back out on its own. And you get to look more into this animal. Maybe you already know you love this animal and you just wanted to stick around forever. So you get to make it as big as you want. It could take up your entire room from floor to ceiling, from wall to wall, and every space in between. So you get to decide what you do with this little animal in your hands. Maybe you get to play with it later on, changing its color, making it bigger or smaller. See, the animal in my hands, a little elephant, he goes toot toot. But maybe later on when I play with him, I might see what he looks like if he barks like a dog. Even thinking about an elephant barking like a dog makes me laugh a little bit. Because it changes the meaning. It changes the thoughts around it, even the feelings. See, the elephant that was big and scary, when it barks like a dog, it's kind of funny. You can embrace it. So take a moment. Take a moment with this animal and decide where you want to put it for now. Or if you want to put them away, or keep them out for the rest of the day. So you can truly listen to the message, the thoughts, the feelings, the desires that this animal brings to your life. And when you're ready, you get to come on back, opening your eyes, bringing with you this insight from going inwards. Now,
Very nice. I like that one. For the people who are viewing, we'd love to just hear. You don't have to tell us specifics, but did you do it? And if there's anything you want to share, please do.
no.
A couple things that I noticed were, first of all, now I hope I can remember, but when the animal came, my first thought was, why this animal? Then you said something like, um, that changed my thinking around that. You said something along the lines of, just I can't remember. I have to read the listen to the recording, but it was another way to just notice it instead of like questioning it, right? And
Yeah.
so I found that that's always so important because so often our mind will do that. Like, well, why was it a kitten? What shouldn't it have been something exotic, like tiger and alligator or something?
Yeah. And I will say when it questions it, that's the conscious mind, right? If you think of a conscious mind, it's very logical. It needs an answer to why that animal. But the unconscious mind is very illogical, unlogical. I think it's illogical.
Illogical, yeah.
Yeah. It chooses an image based on a feeling,
Right.
you know. And so that is something the conscious mind literally cannot comprehend, which is amazing because when we think of all change happens unconsciously,
Hmm. Yeah,
you know. And so when you don't worry about what the conscious mind is trying to figure out, and you can just go inwards and enjoy, right? To have fun, to be, whether it's a detective or just inquisitive about what, not so much why this animal, but what this animal wants to share with you.
well, and so that was, that was the thing when you said something else along those lines, and I noticed, the animal in my hand, and the way that it was turned, and how it was looking at me, and like, what it wanted, and I'd love to, talk a little bit about the power of um, looking inwards and immediately, or whenever, making it into an animal, the difference between giving some space to look at a thing opposed to just looking inward. Because I feel like through that experience, it just, you go in and you just see what comes out, opposed to staying in and investigating in. So I was curious,
So
share about that.
yeah, so this is a really good exercise, especially for people who are newer to going inwards. Um, just because it, and maybe you experience this too. There's a lot of people who go, well, I can't go inwards for too long because I get pulled out of it, you know. And this gives them that focal point. So, like, even if you're picturing the animal in your hand going inwards, you're still inwards. It's kind of like that magician's distraction, right? They're having you look over to the left when it's really happening on the right. And so you're kind of tricking your mind going, oh, we're not inwards, but you are inwards, you know,
Definitely.
because it is one, like when we go inward, really what we're working on doing is finding our insight, right? Our, our voice for really what's going on, you know. It's one where it can help us find our compass to go, oh man, right? Because even let's say you think it's an alligator, right? And it looks ornery and angry and chompy, it's probably not trying to hurt you. He's trying to protect you from something.
I think that's what you asked. It was like, what does the animal want or need? And I feel like that's a different question than like, what is it or why is it here? Like, initially my mind said, why is it here? But then you ask, what does it want or need? And then all of a sudden there's a changed focus and investigation into what does it need? Because that's a bigger question than why is it here?
Way bigger.
Yeah. And like more informative and more inquisitive and even more compassionate. There's
Yeah.
that a judgmental way of why is it here, and there's a more compassionate way of what does it need. And then there was another part that was interesting. Then, you gave us these ideas of how to, that you can expand it, make it smaller, change its color, make a different sound. And I felt like for that, it reminds us that we are also the curators of our lives, even though it feels so often that we're just being pushed around by the universe, that we still have, you know, um, things that come up in our minds. Then we have this opportunity to say, what if it does this? What if it does that? And moving and shaping it around. And for me, I noticed the position of the animal in my hand. And so I decided to change its position and like see what that would do, you know. And I felt like, yeah, obviously there's so much more you can do with that. But
Yeah. Yeah. It again, like if we think of every image we have is a metaphor for how we feel or what we think. By changing an aspect in it, it changes the whole thought and feelings around it. Um, it's why, like in hypnosis, the fast phobia cure, right? is to run through something backwards, you know. And when we think about that, like it's one where my wife, she's on TikTok a lot, and she's always like, "Look at this funny video. How crazy does it look when you play?" So there's like a fireman rescuing children out of a burning building, but they did it in reverse, so it looks like they're putting them into the burning building. And how does that change the message, right, of what's going on, the narrative, the story, right? Now, if they're these firefighters saving the day, it looks like they're putting children into a burning building, and it changes everything, you know. And it's such a simple thing, but in real life, it changes. Like she looks at it, she knows it's a joke and it's funny, but like that's what changes it for her. It changes the narrative, and so that's why like the fast phobia cure works so well. Is because you're starting out running away. Instead of running away, let's say you're afraid of snakes, you're running to the snake
Mm.
backwards, you know, and the snake is now around your neck, and then it's someone else is taking the snake off you, and it changes just the whole narrative of the story. So when we're here and we're just playing with our animal, right, and we change little things about it, what we're doing is we're changing the narrative, right? We're changing the story that it was originally trying to tell us. And a lot of times we can change it for something better, right? Because let's say it is something scary, right? Let's say we're having a thought of like, man, like I'm gonna, I don't know, lose my house, or I'm going to, have to um, find a new job because I lost this job, right? That's scary. But let's say you give it a little honking sound, like a rubber duck type of honk, it changes the story. It changes the animal. So it's no longer scary. It's a little bit funny. Now, that obviously doesn't solve like, oh man, I got to go find a new job, but it makes it less scary to go out and get a new job, to put yourself out there, you know?
I have to say, even just you saying that, I was feeling losing a house or a job and the scary, and then you said to put the honking, and it made me laugh, and then I felt the funniness, almost like a clown with a tuba just kind of following you around. It's like all of a sudden, yeah, I still need to find a job and a house, but um, you put something else in there. I think that's super powerful. I'd love to just talk about that for a few more moments. Like, could you give us some more examples of, I guess, changing the narrative? I think I just want to highlight this concept, and of course we'd have to go deeper into it, but something that feels scary, what if you add this, like, honk, or um
It's one where any Harry Potter fan out there will intrinsically have learned this behavior if you read the books or watched the movie. So I forget which one it is, but they talk about a creature in it called the Bogart, right? Which takes the form of your biggest fear. And the way you overcome it is you say ridiculous and you imagine it wearing or doing something different, right? So one of them was one of the professors, big, scary, professor. And then they had him put on their grandmom's clothes or something like that, right? And all of a sudden it was funny. That is literally what we just did, right? In that moment, for something scary to not scary. And it's amazing because like that technique has been around since the 60s, right? But it's so effective that, yeah, like you can put it in movies and books and just in our lives. And sometimes it helps to say that spell like ridiculous to whatever's in your hand to change it, right? Because it might be so scary where you're like, whoa, I don't even want to touch it, like, you know. But if you go, oh, I got a magic wand, right? Because ultimately we have unlimited tools inside us to do whatever is needed, to be able to go, oh yeah, we can do that, right? Little tap of the wand, poof, it changed into, from a rhinoceros to a little duck, right? When it does change, it changes everything about it. But sometimes you go, Pete, like, I don't even want to hold it, right? Like, if it was like real life, like a tarantula isn't something I'd want to hold, right? And so in my mind, if I was like, oh man, this is so scary, it's like a tarantula, I wouldn't want to hold it in my hand. So what I can do is go, well, maybe I can imagine it in its natural habitat, right? And what's on the other side of his habitat? And what will change if I bring him from his habitat to a new one? You know, anything we do to change, you know, anything will ultimately change the meaning. And it's all, again, it's all inward stuff, right? It's one where, you know, besides me saying have it become an animal, everything else was just your inward speaking to you. You
Yeah.
know,
So I feel like we definitely need to, I think that next week would be great to talk about um, more questions and tools to get there. Because I know for me, and I imagine with other people, sometimes you don't know what question to ask, or how to change this thing or situation. So for example, certain people, wands or magic, or that's not going to work for them. But when you said toolbox, I automatically thought, someone might just want to pull a screwdriver out and open something up and change it, or like you said, changing the environment. So it'd be great for the next session to really discuss various ways that people can start to build up their own repertoire of how to ask questions, or how to um, add something into the mix to allow it to change.
yeah, you know, I would say a lot of it comes from listening,
Right.
right? When you really listen in to the thoughts, the feelings, the desires that whatever it is there for, it'll tell you what it needs. You know, it'll tell you, oh, I need to change this part of me, right? It could be saying, oh, my leg is broken. That's why I have to act this way. You know, it as you listen, like that's where whether you want to be a detective or whatnot comes in, because when you listen, that voice, that animal, that feelings, the thoughts, they will tell you what is going on. You know, because again, like at that moment, the world's your oyster. There's no limitation on what you can do, right? Like let's say it's an animal with a broken leg, you could bandage it, you could pop off the leg and put on a brand new one, right? You could swap it out, so maybe it's just magically heal. You know, maybe you had to be a doctor and you take X-rays of it and realize, oh, it's not broken, it's just dislocated. You know, but it only comes from when we listen.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Well, it's just to kind of conclude for today, there's so many ways to listen inwards, and there's so many ways in to get there. And I know that for some people it's very easy and simple, and for other people it seems impossible. And there's various obstacles, whether it's your fear, whether it's your thinking mind, your judgmental mind, and a plethora of other ideas of possibilities that could be blocking you. But um, the listening inwards is seemingly just one of the biggest keys and foundations. So I hope that people who are listening, that you try it, and you can definitely just kind of go back in the video again and just listen to Pete. It's always amazing to use the resources that are around that you have until you start to understand how to do it yourself. And then we'll just keep building on more and more tools and more questions and ways. For me, is having that animal in my hand and saying, what do you need, opposed to why are you here? And also having the opportunity to change its body position from where it was to another position, and seeing how that goes. Um, those two things you can go far with. So um, we'll just conclude for today. And always, anyone reach out to me or Pete with any questions or anything through social media. all the platforms that are there. And thank you, Pete, so much. And I'm definitely looking forward to next week and maybe even the week after. I think this is a really good tool bag to work on and to just keep throwing into the mix. You know, all the various ways and questions and really the biggest point I'm wanting to make is these are all things that give us the what do you call it, like the power to be involved in our story, right? And sometimes it's as simple as, like you said, I mean, it's like in this real world we think, oh, a leg is broken, I could bandage it or take medicine. But in this inward world, you can just pull the leg off and put a new one on, and that will literally change aspects of the belief and the mind. And you know, like you said before, like working on changing the narrative, and that the change happens unconsciously. So that's, I think, a really cool thing is we're getting out of that logical mind and getting into that unconscious and that belief system where you can just pull a leg off and put a new one on, or make a kitten bark, or make a frog meow. Um, so yeah. Any last words from you today, Pete?
Yeah, the big one is make time for this, right? This can make the biggest difference of you ending the day on a really good note or starting the day on a really bad note, right? Is just take the time. And again, it's not like you have to take an hour. You might only have 5 minutes, but you know what? That 5 minutes is better than no minutes, you know. But you have to make the time, and it's not selfish to take the time. It's one of the least selfish things we can do. Something my family hates that I say all the time is you got to be selfish to be selfless. And essentially, what it is sometimes you got to take care of yourself so you can give other people the best you. Because if you're only running at 10%, you can't give people 100. So
Yeah.
you got to make sure you get yourself up there to help others.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, you know, set an alarm for 6 p.m. and go back to that animal in your hand. So, you
Yep.
know, maybe consider even having an alarm set for once a day or twice a day to just do a few minutes of this inward work.
Yep.
So, right on. Well, thank you. And thanks for everyone for listening. And we'll see y'all next week. Thanks, Pete, for
Yes.
being here as always. Ciao.
Bye.